Hi guys, here is a quick summary of chapter 4, or chapter 5, sorry. And I really think this is probably one of the most important chapters in this book. There's a lot of really important stuff here, and what we're really trying to do is understand our consumers, and we're trying to understand what goes on in their heads where we convert stimulus or stimuli into responses. What makes some people go out and make a purchase when they see a certain ad or a certain image? And they talk about kind of this black box that's in the consumer's mind. And so we know what kind of stimulus we as marketers put in there. What's going to turn them into action? What's going to make them make a purchase or remember our product or something like that? So that's really what we're studying in this one. We start talking about some of the things that are going to influence consumers' buying patterns. And the first one is culture. And if we talk about culture overall, we're talking about big picture stuff. These are again, remember, these are things that marketers can't change, but they are things that marketers will look for changes in. So things that we have standards are, hard work is a good thing. Achievement, freedom. These are good things in our culture. Marketers are always looking for shifts in these as well. So some shifts recently have been an increased emphasis on health and fitness. Now that's not something marketers determine, but marketers are going to look for those shifts and try to take advantage of that. Also, kind of being more informal. In most places, business casual is more common than dressing up. So those are important shifts in what's acceptable in our culture. Subculture is another really big one here. So subculture has to do with nationality. So within the culture, so let's say the culture would be the U.S. or the human race. But within this culture, then you've got different nationalities, different religions, different ethnicities or racial mixes and that kind of stuff. And they'll all behave a little bit differently. And your book gives several examples, like for instance, Hispanics are very brand loyal compared to other ethnicities. And so as a marketer, that's important to know. African Americans tend to be very fashion conscious. So again, as a marketer, I need to know that. Asian American, being another subculture, are very brand conscious compared to some other ones. And they also tend to be kind of tech savvy. So these are things that you want to keep in mind here that are going to influence their decision. So they might, somebody who's very brand conscious might be more affected by the types of advertising than somebody who is not. So those are things to look for in there. And then social class also plays into it because that's going to determine what's acceptable again in your certain types of purchases are acceptable or not acceptable in your social class. Social groups, we talk about different groups that you belong to. We talk about aspirational groups. That's the group I want to be in. We talk about opinion leaders. And these are people that have a lot of influence. As a marketer, if you can get opinion leaders to promote your product, that's really good because they have a lot of influence over people and are a very trustworthy source there. We talk about family. And again, in different groups, family has a much bigger role on your purchasing than in others. And also your roles and your status. And people have different roles. Your role at work versus your role at home might be different. Your role as a professional might be different than your role as a soccer mom, but you're still the same person, and different things are acceptable and not acceptable in those different groups. Another one here is personal things. Age and life cycle is a big one, and one of the things in there is to make sure you don't stereotype in there. We'll talk about that too, but like for instance, 40-something would be the age, but you could have 40-somethings who just had their first baby, and you could have 40-somethings whose kids are already grown, so they're at very different stages of their life cycle. But where you are in your life cycle definitely influences what you purchase and how you purchase it. If you're just starting out your family, probably a lot of things are about kids and safety and education and that kind of thing. Whereas once your kids are gone, your emphasis is going to be different. Occupation can influence your purchases and your buyer behavior. It can determine the type of clothes that you need, the type of technology that you use or that you're used to. Economic situation can do it. Obviously, when we went into a recession, you saw a lot more people looking for good values. Lifestyle refers to people's activities that they're interested in, their interests, and their opinions. So that might be if you're, like the outdoorsy type or something like that. I know that's not a very great example, but you know what I mean. Personality. A lot of times people want the personality of their brand to match their own personality, or at least what they like to think of them. Class example of that is those commercials that used to have the Mac and the PC, and the PC guy was a kind of a dorky looking guy in a suit, and the Mac guy was really cool and hip, and so that would be an example there. But people tend to try to purchase products that they think the personality of that brand or that product matches their own personality. Then we've got psychological influences. Motivation is one, and there the book spends a good bit of time there talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Motivation, again, means you are motivated to action, and so if you haven't had Maslow in another class, take a look at that section. Perception is a really interesting one here. They talk about a couple different things here. Selective attention has to do with the fact that we are bombarded with stimuli and messages, and we can't possibly take it all in. So how the process that we use to screen out, you probably drove past a whole bunch of billboards today that you didn't even notice. So what process is going in there that helps you screen it out? And as a marketer, how can you make sure they don't screen your message out? And then we talk about selective distortion, which means you tend to see stuff in a way that supports what you already believe. If it's contrary to what you believe or what you want to believe, you tend to kind of block that out or perceive it differently. And that also kind of goes in line with selective retention, which again means you probably remember the things that support the ideas you already want to. And we talked about at the beginning, marketers, the most successful marketers are ones that give people what they already want, not convince them of what they don't want. And so people already have some perception or beliefs or what they want to. For instance, when I was getting a new iPhone, for example, I might have seen studies that talked about why the iPhone was bad or why this Android was better. But in my mind, I already wanted that iPhone, and so I'm going to tend to notice and remember the ones that support that thing that I already want, and kind of block out the other ones or not remember them. Learning is when I change my behavior because of experiences. So if I had a bad experience with a particular brand of car, then I'm going to learn from that, and I might not do that again. Whereas if I have a good experience with something, again, I learn from that, and that's more likely to change my my buying habits in the future. Beliefs and attitudes are very hard to change once they're established. So that is something to keep in mind. That's why you want to try and get it right the first time, because once they have a bad experience, it's going to be very hard to change that. Okay, so those are all the things that are influencing the buyer decision process. Now let's look at what goes on in the buyer decision process. Need recognition. This could be internal or external stimulus. It could be you, hey, I'm hungry, I need some food. So there's a need recognition. That's pretty simple. It could be that you see a commercial for a Snuggie and you never even knew those existed, but now you realize you can't possibly live without them. So that would be an external search. An external stimulus. Then the information search. Again, if it's something, if it's a big purchase, this is probably going to be kind of lengthy. If it's something really simple, like I just need a snack, it's going to be a very small information search. Then you evaluate your alternatives and arrive at an intention to purchase. I'm on my way home. I realize I'm hungry. My info search could just be racking my brain to see what fast food things are on my route. And so then I evaluate, okay, I got 3 things on my way. Which one do I want? And I arrive at an intention. Hopefully then that is translated into a purchase decision. With me stopping for a snack on the way home, that's probably pretty simple. Sometimes if it's a larger thing, when we were buying a new dishwasher, I went through this process here like 4 times, and okay, I decided this is the one I want, but then I did not actually go pull the trigger because buying a dishwasher is not fun. So sometimes they go through this process and don't actually purchase it, but once they do, that purchase decision is definitely affected by all of these things that we talked about up here at the top. And then the one that marketers cannot forget about is the post-purchase behavior. This is where the consumer compares what they were expecting to get to the perceived performance of what they got. For example, if I spent the night at a Motel 6, probably not expecting a really high level of service. And so if I got mediocre service, I'm probably pleased because what I got was greater than what I was expecting. Whereas if I stayed at the Ritz-Carlton and I got mediocre service, I'm going to be disappointed because what I think I got is less than what I was expecting. And if that's the case, then you experience what we call cognitive dissonance, which means you are regretting that purchase. And then that will turn into what we talked about, the learning, and you have a negative experience, and people learn from that, and that can affect us in the long term. So it's really about what they feel they got compared to what they were expecting to get here. Okay, so new products, a brand new product that's not out there. We're talking about the process that people go through when they decide what they get it. The first step is awareness. Just I'm aware that this thing exists now because it's something new, so you have to make people aware. Then if that awareness can generate enough interest, then they will seek out information about that. Then they will evaluate. Based on the information they got, they say, should I try this or not? Again, the process is going to be more complicated for something big like high-def TVs or something like that. First you're aware that and then if you're interested in it, you're going to seek some information, and then you're going to decide, should I try this? A lot of things, it's good if they can try it on a small scale first. So with the TV, that might be just looking at it in the store. That's why they give out samples at the grocery store. And then if the trial went well, then you move to full and regular use of the product. So then I bought it, and hopefully I continue to buy it. So this process, how fast or how slow this process right here goes, depends on the type of person. You've got innovators who will try anything new. They are the first person to get every gadget that comes out, and they will buy everything. Then you've got the early adopters, and so they'll do it early, but they are still careful. So these tend to be your opinion leaders, because if Joe gets it, that doesn't really mean anything. He buys everything. He buys every gadget that comes out there. But if Bob gets it, then that's gonna influence my opinion a lot more, because I know Bob does a little research first. He gets a little more information, and so if Bob adopts it, that's going to have a lot more weight with me. You've got the early majority then, and these are people that are much more deliberate. They're going to take longer to decide whether they're going to switch over to this new product or not. The late majority were probably pretty skeptical about it. And then the laggards are very traditional. If you look at tech, I think any kind of tech product is a good example of this kind of process. And so I'm sure you could probably think of people in each of those categories. Okay, so that takes us down to business buyer behavior. Okay, and oh wait, I want to one more thing before I talk about businesses. I wanted to talk about the rate of adoption. So we talked about how it's different for different people, but what influences that rate of adoption? How fast people adopt a new product? And some things that are going to influence that would be the relative advantage of this product compared to what's already out there, compatibility with their current lifestyle or with what they already have. For instance, when Blu-rays came out and you couldn't play them on a DVD player, but then the Blu-ray players, you could play the DVDs on the Blu-ray, so that made it more compatible. I'm more likely to adopt a Blu-ray player if I know I can play all the DVDs I already have on it. Complexity, how hard it is to explain it to your potential customers. Divisibility. Can I break it into small parts? That makes it easier for people to try on a limited basis. It's kind of tough to do with, say, an HD TV or something like that. And also communicability. Is the difference between this and what's already out there something that you can explain to your customers? Sometimes they have to see it in action to really understand the difference. And the harder it is to show the difference, the harder it's going to be to convince people to adopt it. But that is, those things all affect how fast or how slow a new product can catch on. Okay, buyers. So business buyers are ones that are going to, they're buying stuff because they're going to use it to make another product or service, or they're buying it because they're going to resell it, like a retailer would be that. And so there are fewer buyers, but they're buying in much larger quantities. So the dollar amount is much, much higher than for consumers. The other thing that's different about businesses is that it's a derived demand. So for instance, the demand for chips or processors depends on the demand for computers. So if the demand for the thing that you're making goes down, then the demand for the parts goes down as well. You've got different buying situations. A straight rebuy is just unlike reordering paper for the copier. A new task, for example, would be I'm ordering a specialized piece of equipment or something really new. And so we're going to show the steps over here. If a straight rebuy, you're probably going to skip most of those steps and go right to the end. If it's a new task, you're probably going to go through all of those tasks. And a modification would be somewhere in between. A modification might be a modification to the product, or it might mean you're looking around for different suppliers. And then the other thing here is that you have a buying center, so it's not just one person, like we had in the consumer. And so some other differences here with this buying center is you're generally going to have tighter budgets. You've got a lot more people looking at it too. You're going to have specific policies and procedures in here for buying, which can make so you're not going to have impulse purchases here. You're going to have policies and procedures. And since there's more than one person, there's also probably going to be some group dynamics involved in the process here, which can always complicate things. And then here are the steps of the buyer decision-making process. It's similar to the consumer one, but more involved. The problem recognition, and then I got to spec it out, and then I got to search for suppliers, and then I have to make the selection like that. I might get bids out there, and so it can be a very for like a new piece of equipment that costs millions of dollars. This could be a very long process. Again, if I'm just ordering new paper or something, I might just skip right to here. Important to remember the performance review. Sometimes we get stuck in a rut and we just keep buying from the same supplier because it's easier, but we might not be getting the best deal, so we do need to go back and look at that. The other thing here in the business that's really affecting it, is e-procurement. So buying it online. This means you have less contact. So as a salesman, you have less contact with your customers than you had before. There's less visits, which means it's easier for the customers to shop around and look at other suppliers, which means it's easier to switch suppliers. So as a customer, that's good. It's really easy to look around and get the best deal, but there's less kind of loyalty here. So as a seller, that's something that you really need to make sure that you are aware of, and you need to keep some contact with them so that you don't lose those sales just because it's easier to shop around. Okay, there's a summary of Chapter 5.